All right, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Hawks Eye Podcast, your source for Seahawks content. Today, we're going to be lucky enough to be joined by Curtis Allen of the Seahawks Draft Blog. Curtis does an amazing job covering the NFL cap, the Seahawks cap as a whole. He's my go-to source for any cap-related questions. And today, we'll touch on a little bit of that, a little bit of the Abe Lucas contract, because we haven't had Curtis on for a while. But really, we're going to get Curtis's kind of check on how he's feeling after that 49ers loss, as well as how does he think Seattle is going to match up going into Pittsburgh and facing that steel curtain. So before we get into that, as always, please like and subscribe to the channel. Helps me out, helps get this channel up over that 1,000 subscriber mark, which will give me a lot more freedoms to do a lot more different cool content for you guys. So after you guys do that, we'll have on Curtis Allen. Welcome back in, and I have Curtis Allen joining me of the Seahawks Draft Blog. Curtis, you haven't actually been on the new show, so that's a first. This is the first time getting you on over here on the Hawks Eye, so it's a pleasure to have you on over here on this channel. But Curtis, how you been? How you feeling after week one?
Well, it's a great time of year. The weather starts changing a little bit, starts cooling off, and leaves start changing, and football starts going. So one of my favorite times of the year. And week one, I don't think I have too much of a different feeling than a lot of fans that have gone through it this week. It wasn't very similar to what we looked at in camp and in preseason as far as the offense goes. It was very similar what we saw out of the defense, which was, very good, tough defense, good tackling, occasional breakdown, little things here and there, but defense was fairly what we thought, but the offense, nothing like we thought. And that's a challenge. I think there's such a buildup and of the summer and the camp and, all the personnel moves that we get to the season. And it's kind of a shock to all of us. Almost every year it's like this, it feels like. So it's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen that first week. It's such a crazy week with the unpredictability of it. But I thought there was a lot of good takeaways though from the game. There was a lot to like out of that game, I think.
There is a lot, and that's one thing I kind of wanted to touch on, Curtis, was this reality check. So we talked about, you just brought up how the offense didn't really match what we saw in camp, and especially when you and me were there with Dan and Brandon and all that on the berm, and what we saw in those team kind of periods and such was you saw a lot of what we thought we were going to see with the 21, the 12 personnel, the two tight ends, the boot and play action, and then we come out in this first game and we see none of that. We see all of one play action play called all day. We see no boot action at all. Yeah. And we don't see the running game. We were living in 11 personnel. There were, tendency breakers that I just, mentioned to you before we recorded here that Seattle was in almost 50% 11 personnel. And the thing for me is I think part of that might have to do with the injuries to Derek Young and Jake Bobo. And the reason I say that is both of them are such good blocking receivers that now you're in this situation where I don't think Torrey Horton is a blocking receiver yet in his career. He's still a rookie. He's your burner. He's your kind of gadget, guy that you can get it to him deep in different situations and stuff. I don't know if he's a guy you're leaving out there when there's two tight ends and you're saying, hey, we need you to make this seal block on this linebacker. I don't think that's Torrey Horton's game. So I think Jake Bobo and Derek Young played a factor in that. And it sounds like Bobo is going to be back this week from all intents and purposes. He cleared concussion protocol, it looks. But how much of a reality check was that, A, for fans, and B, maybe even for this team and this coaching staff, that they still have this monkey on their back, metaphorically speaking, of the San Francisco 49ers?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of everything mixed in with this game that we really tried to kind of cram into the game and couldn't make it all fit and work together so much. So I don't understand. There were no design plays for the tight ends to really have a play. The AJ Barner had a couple of catches. He was more of like a pressure outlet than like having a design play. And just looking at the roster from the roster and the personnel standpoint, so they cut Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they cut Noah Fant. I in my mind that, and I think it's a rational thought that, okay, we have answers, we have solutions behind them at those positions that we feel comfortable going forward with. Now, who's to say that it won't be that, for instance, like you said, Torrey Horton, maybe Elijah Arroyo by December will just be, wow, these guys are great and a central part of the offense. So we may have to kind of temper our expectations a little bit with that and making sure that, yes, they are rookies and maybe things can't get going too well. But I do think, in a sense, it was a reality check. And my optimistic mind says every team needs a punch in the mouth or a gut check or some kind of a character building exercise that this reminds them. You think you're going the right way, you need to kind of tighten up and refocus a little bit here. So there's definitely a feeling like, okay, they haven't gotten over the 49ers, and even a very banged up 49er team, even before all this week's injuries, everything started. It made it very difficult. All my years of watching in the recent past of the 49ers watching is, how does George Kittle get wide open every single play? It seems like and we haven't seen this team enough to know that they're going to design tricks for him. And like I tweeted during the game, how does everybody on the defense not know where 85 is the second the ball snapped, and know what's going on? Anybody that is in the linebacking safety group should know exactly where he is and what's happening, and don't get fooled by red herrings that Kyle Shanahan is so good at putting out there. So, but I do remind myself, I do. The year they went to Super Bowl 49, they started out 3-3. We were all kind of rending our garments, and we got our shot at the Super Bowl, and we're having the hangover, and things aren't going to go right. Well, they reeled off 9-1 after that. So, yes, it's early. Yes, it's also very disappointing. But one of the things I take away from the game is, after the game, every player, to a man, were very upset, very disappointed. There wasn't a guy that was, okay, yeah, we didn't do so well. We'll try our best next week. You could tell guys were very, very beat up by this. Ernest Jones was very nice to give a in locker room interview with a female reporter on King 5. And you could tell he's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be answering these questions. I'm so angry. And she's like, yeah, you had a great game. And didn't you? You did this and did that. He's like, yeah, but we lost. And that's an attitude that I want to keep going. And I think Mike McDonald loves that attitude.
Yeah, and we can obviously beat to death the offensive side of this. For me, there's a bit of it. I put a good chunk of blame too at the defeat of Mike McDonald. For one, his game plan, I feel, was so heavily based in Nick Eamon-Wari being a big contributing factor to it. And once he went out, it was like it was scramble situation. Okay, we're going to throw Tyler Cott out there on Kittle. That's a mismatch. As soon as they Kyle Shanahan and that offensive staff realized that they attacked Okada like crazy. And I think Ty Okada is a good safety as a deep safety. I don't think he is a box safety that should be lining up in those situations. And then on the other side of that, then it was like, okay, Devin Witherspoon's going back into the nickel and he's going to be playing in there. And which was fine because Josh Jobe did a very good job. I think Josh Jobe's one of the bright spots in this game, definitely. Everyone will talk about JSN and so on, but I think Josh Jobe was one of the better bright spots in this game.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of in this weird situation where I look at Mike Macdonald and I'm like, okay, so you have that issue, and then you have the 4th and 1 call where, yeah, I know there's fans that are saying, well, take the points, bet on the defense. Well, yes, but why not go, people saying, oh, well, you couldn't run the ball. Well, Seattle was averaging 3 yards a carry. You needed a half a yard at best. It was 4th and 1, but it was really like 4th and 3/4 of a yard to get. I think in that situation, and this is something I said on one of my shows that I'm going to release tonight with the coach from All 22 Films, is that to me, that 4th and 1, that seemed like the Jalen Milroe moment. Put Jalen Milroe in the game there. Have that be your read option or your boot pass or whatever. Put him in at that point where that will now stress out the 49ers having, okay, now we've like legitimately got a running threat on the field at the quarterback position. We can't just squeeze down. Nick Bosa can't just crash down the line because if Jalen Milroe keeps it, you might not catch Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
And that's where, for me, when they put him in earlier in the game, it was kind of like a, why are we doing this now? This doesn't make any sense moment. That to me seemed like more the moment. So I think if I was to cut a pie and say how much of that portion goes each way, I would say 60%, in my opinion, goes to the coaching staff and their game plan for the loss. And then I'd say the other 40% is on player execution and players having bad games like Arik Woolen and so on. To me, that felt like a very odd moment to see Mike Macdonald get outcoached.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I feel like the Niners have a mentality that I kind of like now. They've been to the Super Bowl and they've lost the Super Bowl, and they've got good players and then they lose good players. There's kind of a what do we have left? What's stopping us from taking the chances? And that tough 4th and 2 where Devin Witherspoon really crunched was it Kittle? I think it was, or something like that, where they converted him, and it was a tough hit. And it was like, yeah, that was a tough play, but they made it and they converted it. So they brought in a mentality that the Seahawks still are trying to kind of feel their way into with the coach and the way that he wants to coach. But I agree with you. I don't understand some of the calls like the Milroe, was it the second snap in? I don't understand that. That made no sense whatsoever. They talked about how they had more in their package that they wanted to bring in, but you kind of test that out later in the game when you kind of got a feel for the rhythm of the game, as opposed to trying to dictate it right out of the gate with a play like that. And then that throw across, scramble left, stop, and throw across to the right with a screen pass. That play is begging to be pick sixed. It was such a bad play that where did this come from? I can understand.
It made no sense, Curtis. It made no sense because you haven't moved Sam Darnold all game. And on that moment, you're going to move him, and you're not even going to give any route concepts going to where he is going.
Yeah.
But you have JSN. Like, the thing for me, and again, this is kind of like the last point I'll make. I feel like Robert Saleh had such a good understanding of certain things. Like I did a film breakdown with Dan Viens on the passing game and the targets to JSN and stuff. But one of the things I noticed Robert Saleh started doing at certain points was when the Seahawks were in shorter distances, he played a lot of cover one, and he played a lot of cover one robber, which is something that got Sam in trouble last year versus the Rams in Detroit at the end of the year, where teams figured out this is what he likes in these situations. He'll quick look and throw back there with almost not checking. we can sneak that robber defender right into those windows. And on that one where Cup caught it on that slant, I would almost say Sam got lucky that robber defender didn't play that more aggressively. He kind of hesitated for a half second, and it was almost a pick.
Yeah, and honestly, that after that crazy screenplay, 2 plays later, it was 3rd and 18, and they have JSN trying to throw a pass across the field. In my mind, that's when you bring Jalen Milroe in, get him in the flat, and then let him either create with it, or maybe he could use his arm, get a little further downfield, draw everybody's attention, and then maybe, flip it over to somebody on the other side of the field. So it felt like it was a little bit of out coaching yourself, a little bit of knowing the Niners, knowing what you're going to do because the systems are so similar. And it also felt a little bit of not trusting what you've been doing all summer long. It felt like, okay, this is the Niners. Maybe we're going to have to come out and win in this first game. We're going to try and stake our claim on the division right out of the gate, and we've got to come out with something that's a little special. And I don't know. The only thing I can rationalize it is to think that maybe it's great that the first game of the year you get punched in the mouth with, for trying to be too cute, and you'll get back to that drive, that offense that we saw in the Kansas City preseason game. Even if it's not gangbusters like that, you're grinding up time, you're chewing the clock, and you're getting the defense sort of set up for what you want to do later in the game.
So we've kind of beat that game to death. I think that's kind of the point I can make. It's been talked about ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks. And so let's move on. Let's look at this test versus Pittsburgh. And so, like I said, it's in this little segment, it's the steel curtain test ahead. This defensive front for the Steelers is no joke. It is as good, if not better, than what we just played against with the San Francisco 49ers. So, in your mind, Curtis, what do you want to see out of the Seahawks offense to basically, and I'm going to put it this way, and some people may not like it, how are they going to survive TJ Watt and Highsmith off the edges, plus now Cameron Haywood in the middle?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a very interesting a matchup one-on-one with the offensive line, with the tackles, and to see how that goes will be a very interesting litmus test, even more so than with the Niners. I think there's going to be a very interesting game plan. The Seahawks have been able to take advantage of Abe Lucas kind of routing TJ Watt up the field on runs, and their explosive runs have been to that right side at times against the Steelers and other teams in the past. So I think there's an opportunity there for them to have some really good run games. Clint Kubiak last year in 2 years ago, when he was the run game coordinator, and not the coordinator, but the run game coordinator in San Francisco, they had a great game. And then 2000, when he was the offensive coordinator in Minnesota, they had another great game. It was like 250 yards rushing against this front. And so I think some of the schemes that they come up with in order to really kind of press and get this defense moving one way, and they're going to move the other way, can really be effective. And the Jets, honestly, looked very good against this defense, and I was pleasantly surprised by how good they were able to do that. And I think they just have to get back to what their original plan was: is Sam Darnold being a quarterback, making the right, or being a point guard, making the right decisions, and the guys trusting their reads. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Zach Charbonnet. We're going to commit to Zach Charbonnet this week. He's going to be able to meet the moment with these tough defenders, and then just go right at them. Wouldn't shock me at all to see they chip TJ Watt, they will chip Highsmith, they will rotate around and get some looks at Cam Hayward, but it wouldn't shock me to see that they'll have a tight end blocking, but they'll still basically the responsibilities will be the front five will be on them to make sure that this line just doesn't take the game over. And if they do, they've got spots where they're vulnerable now. Their safeties have been hurt, and they've been ones that you can target. The linebackers haven't been great either. So it kind of feels like that tough kind of a game where if you get past the star player on whatever side you're on, you've got room to run. So and I don't want to be too overly optimistic, but it feels like that's Kubiak's forte. Is that something is just get around a player, get around a guy, and then let his talent take over.
It's really interesting because for me, I think there's two things that need to kind of happen in this game. They need to obviously commit to the run and ball control the offense.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is with all the injuries that we're seeing on the defensive side, we may not have Devin Witherspoon. We may not have Julian Love or Jaron Reed. Like, there's quite a few guys that are clearly very banged up from this 49ers game that we may not have, which is something that, again, concerns me a little bit. And the way you handle having new guys on defense that aren't necessarily as, familiar with it, is you control the game on offense. You don't give them as many opportunities. I think we need to see more boot action, more play action in general to slow down that pass rush, chip with your tight ends. But that's the key part. Get the tight ends involved in this game. Get Elijah Arroyo and AJ Barner involved. Like, they were barely involved. There was no boot and slip your tight end underneath into the flat, dump the ball to him. There was none of that in this game.
Yeah.
That's the stuff I want to see in this Pittsburgh game. That's the stuff that allows Sam Darnold, because the one thing I'll say about Sam's game is it was a fine game. I have no, real big qualms with Sam Darnold about how he played. But the thing when you have a quarterback that's on this quick clock to get the ball out, if they are great off of the play action, which Sam is, it affords him more time to go through his progressions and get the ball to those second and third reads. And I feel that was missing in this game. And it's something that, I think will definitely need to come out in this game going forward. So those are all great points, Curtis. But I want to ask you this. You are a cap guy, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you about what did you think of the Abe Lucas and locking down the right side of this offensive line?
Yeah, I love the contract. I love to try and see what I can predict for contracts, and I was pretty close. I had a 3-year 42. It ended up a 3-year 46 plus some incentives. So I like what I'm seeing. We don't have the details yet, so it's kind of hard to judge because there's always a period where you get misinformation on things. You'll get how much is actually guaranteed? We don't know.
Right.
What are the incentives? We don't know. And so you'll get an idea once we get that. But I think there's probably a year extra, maybe 2 years of where they're committed to Abe Lucas. And then the third year is when they'll probably have to eat some dead money, but it'll be easier if he's either too injured or this is just not working out. So I feel like this is a contract that it works for both sides. He's a great player. He wanted to stay here, and I think they love Abe Lucas from his play and his ability to his attitude and leadership along the offensive line. So honestly, of the 2022 class, if Lucas was healthy, this contract would have been done probably in the summer or a while back. It would have been already in place, and because he's that kind of a player, he's been a great player for them. So I also like the confidence that this shows in their medical staff evaluations and what they think of him, as far as, okay, we don't have to put him out on the field and think, okay, what's going to happen now? And then we'll maybe look at a deal. If they feel like with all of their work that he's put in and all of the training and the tests that he's gone through camp and all that he's a worthy investment. And so, and you can talk about it to death. You have to have continuity on the offensive line. And it may look like we're getting close. So you've got Lucas locked down for 3 years. You've got Anthony Bradford this year. Next year, Jalen Sundell, they have 3 years of team control. Gray Zabel, they have 10 years of team, 5 years of team control and 2 years of team control with Charles Cross. So if these guys can kind of have that gelling experience, maybe by the fall, and kind of start clicking a little bit, and at least being that average to above average line, it's great. And it started, in my mind, it started with Lucas. It started with drafting Gray Zabel, and then it started with signing with Abe Lucas.
Yeah, and I think Charles Cross is the next domino to fall in that O-line. I think Sundell is here for the next 3 seasons, regardless, on his undrafted deal, I'm pretty sure. And then Anthony Bradford's kind of the wild card. I think very much this season will be the determining factor for Anthony Bradford and that right guard position as a whole, because I don't know if they're sold on Christian Haynes being the next guy. Like, I think we saw that throughout camp. So I think you're right. I think there's definitely this signals an investment in the offensive line and not letting our guys get out the door and go somewhere else and be successful and develop even more. Like, let's keep these guys in house. The thing for me with the Abe Lucas deal is I look at it and I go, the cap's going to go up. It always seems to keep going up and trending. And eventually this will look like a deal where we're getting potentially a top 10 right tackle on a top 20 right tackle deal, where he'll be in that kind of that ballpark. And the Charles Cross part, is get your bookends dealt with. You drafted these guys, you've developed them. When Abe Lucas is healthy, he's one of the best right tackles in the NFL. And I know a lot of people go, oh, look, you paid him all this money, and then Nick Bosa drove him back. Nick Bosa is going to make a play in a game. It's Nick Bosa. He's one of the best power rushers in the NFL. Like, it's going to happen. The majority of that game, Sam Darnold was kept clean, which was a very distant thing that most Seahawks fans haven't seen in a long time, is a quarterback not get completely obliterated behind an offensive line, even when we're throwing as much as we were. So, with that being said, who is the next man up for a payday? And I'm going to give you a couple of, obviously, there's a lot of these guys from the 2022 class, but I'm going to kind of go on the defensive side. Who do you think gets paid next between Boye Mafe and Derek Hall?
Well, I think Boye Mafe, obviously with being in the last year of his contract, his name is going to come up more often than what we have. And last year, he came out of the gate like a rocket. After 5 games, he was right up there with all of the TJ Watts and the Hutchinsons and all those guys. He was looking very, very good. So the Seahawks will have to, if he's doing that again, he looked pretty good against Trent Williams on Sunday. So my guess would be they're gonna be looking at Boye Mafe, and if he comes through, if he keeps playing through like November, December, they'll start talking to him then, if they haven't already, and just see where he's at, what he wants, if he's willing to stay. But I have felt the last year or so that Derek Hall is the guy that they want to build around a little bit more, with this attitude, his intensity, his physicality. So if it was a straight up, who are you going to sign first, or who would you prefer? I would prefer Derek Hall at this moment in time. I think Boye Mafe probably will get a very handsome deal in the free agent market next year, and it may be one of those situations where the Tennessee Titans would swoop in, or somebody like Tennessee. I'm just picking a name out of the hat, and give him more money than the Seahawks could possibly feel comfortable with. I just say Tennessee because they pay a Tennessee tax every year, and they're the biggest spending team in the NFL. Like, Dan Moore is on $20 million a year, and talk about getting bullied around all game. Boy, last Sunday's game was not pretty at versus Denver with Nick Bonito and the other guys there. So Derek Hall, I think, would be my choice. I think, when we talk about this, it's kind of black and white. Who are you going to get first? Who's going to get this?
Yeah.
It's all about how do they want to stay? Do they want a deal? And are they willing to take, not shop on the market? Like Abe Lucas, the big key was he wanted to stay here. He's a Seattle guy. He's a Pacific Northwest guy. So he wanted to stay here. He loved the opportunity. And he could, with a solid year, he could have he's getting 15 million a year. He could get 20 with a solid year this year on the open market. But you'd have to go to Tennessee to get that. And so it always is, And then there's the factors of, where are you from? Where's your family from? Do you like warm weather? Do you like the no tax and that kind of stuff? So it's always kind of it's not just necessarily a team says, I want to sign this guy. It's everything's got to work out. So I'm leery of overpaying Boye Mafe because there's a litany of guys like Greg Rousseau in Buffalo, $20 million a year. And he's a fine player. He's fine. But that's fine isn't okay for $20 million a year. It's just not.
No, and that's kind of how I look at it. And the reason I asked you about those two in particular, because I know Reek could be in the discussion, Ken Walker could be in the discussion. Mm-hmm. I think Derek Hall, and you talk about Boye Mafe having, some good reps versus Trent Williams, as did Derek Hall. One of them got wiped completely out by Reek Woolen's illegal contact on, the receiver down the field. I feel Derek Hall still has a higher ceiling to obtain that he hasn't. And I think we saw some of that on Sunday. Maybe he didn't get the numbers and sacks, but his pressure rate and everything like that was up there. I lean in the same direction you do of paying Derek Hall. I think Derek Hall probably is a more dynamic player. And I think you let Boye Mafe go test the market and say, hey, come back to us with whatever number you're getting, and we'll either match or we wish you the best of luck.
Right.
And that's generally how John Schneider's kind of operated. And I think that I really look at this class and I go, if I was to peg somebody in the 2022 class, I think that's going to get paid next, it'll probably be Kobe Bryant, because I think they can get a good deal. We already know from Brady Henderson that they're talking to Kobe Bryant, and there have been talks. I think that's the next person, because I think obviously with Charles Cross, they won't talk to Charles till next offseason, whereas where I think Charles Cross will get his deal. If another one's going to happen this year, I think it'll be Kobe Bryant. And I think based on kind of where we think this weekend's even going to go with Reek Woolen, I think Reek's going to be very much a go test your market, come back to us. If we really want you, we'll bring you back. But I think they really like Josh Jobe. I don't think Kendricks was just some random grab off of the waiver claim from the Rams. I think they do like him, and they've had an eye on another guy. And they got Nehemiah Pritchett as well, who Mike McDonald has raved about a bit this offseason about how well he's played. So I don't think Reek's in the plans for the Seahawks going forward, and I don't know if K9 is.
Yeah.
K9 to me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think I think the Niner game perfectly illustrated why you'd be hesitant to extend those two guys right now, Kenneth Walker and Reek Woolen. Reek Woolen's playing a good game, and then he just lets the defense down game after game. And if there's one player so that you can't have that, it's a deep throw or a pressure throw in the end zone. I feel like I had a little bit of a deja vu kind of a thing, because that touchdown that won the game for the Niners, it felt like the tip. It felt like there was okay, they're in the corner, they're going to be fighting for the ball, and then Reek could go up, either grab it or just tip it away to another defender, and he'll catch it, and then we'll win the game. There it is. And I thought that could be a launching pad for the rest of the year. There's the tip 2.0, something like that. It just looked so familiar. And then you go back and look at the tape this last couple of years, he just hasn't attacked the ball very well, which is the strangest thing, because it's like he forgot that skill set because it was so good in his rookie year. And so, yeah, you can't give that guy a lot of money. Ken Walker, very talented, but he didn't look like he was decisive. He didn't look quick. It felt like rusty. It felt like they've been so putting him in bubble wrap with, oh, he's not practicing today. And then you find out it's a sore foot. Then you find out, well, we're just trying to keep him healthy and manage his snaps and get that going. And, either there's something that we're not being told, he really is more hurt, or he needs to have a role where he's doing more. And I don't know if they can wait for him to dance behind the offensive line for 10 snaps and then bust off a couple of runs. So I just don't think he fits the offense as well. So I can understand why they wouldn't extend those guys.
It's really interesting with the Ken Walker conversation. Ken actually, with what he does well, and if you give him a track to run on, and what I mean by that is like an actual, this is the hole you are hitting, go hit it, he's much more successful. As a, his 1 7-yard run he had, which was basically almost a gap inside hit. It was like a 34 hole, basically power kind of run. They motioned Oots in and he kicked out and they basically ran it dead ahead. Ken Walker's great. The minute you start giving Ken Walker options, Ken Walker becomes indecisive. Oh, is this hole really good or is it this hole? Whereas Zach Charbonnet in the wide zone scheme, he runs very much like how Sean used to run, how Terrell Davis runs in this system, how Arian Foster ran in this system, which is I know my landmarks and where those cutbacks are. I'll put my foot in the ground and go that way.
Find your
that's
keys
where
and
I
go.
think find your keys and go. So it'll be interesting to see how that all goes. But Curtis, I'm going to do one thing, which is on my shows now. Whenever I have guests, I do the 2-minute drill segment. I give you 10 questions, and it's basically your quickest answers. And so right now,
warm up here.
We'll be
all right.
There you go. Warm up for your 2-minute drill. We're going to get into it right now. Go. All right, Curtis. First question, the 2-minute drill. Who was the Seahawks' best player in week 1?
Oh, wow. Ernest Jones.
Okay. Question 2. Bigger disappointment, the run game or the lack of play action?
Lack of play action.
Question 3. Which rookie showed you the most promise against the 49ers?
Gray Zabel. Easy.
Question 4. Who takes the blame for the lack of explosive plays, Darnold or the scheme?
The scheme. The
Question
play calling
5.
scheme, yeah.
Question 5. Which defender stood out most in this tough matchup with San Francisco?
Boy, there's so many good ones. Julian Love had a great game. He really did. He had an all-pro level game.
He did. Question 6. Who looked more concerning in week 1, Sundell or Bradford?
Bradford. Yeah, I thought Sundell looked good. He wasn't perfect, but yeah. And there's a couple of plays with Bradford. He was the old Bradford. So yeah.
He was. Question 7. Did Mike McDonald make the right call kicking on 4th and 1 late in the game?
I understood it, but I don't agree with it.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Question 8. Which player needs the biggest bounce back in week 2?
Ooh. Well, it's Rick Willen. Yeah.
Okay.
He needs a bounce back.
Question 9. What was the most underrated positive from Seattle's week 1 performance?
Oh, that's good. Underrated positive. Let's see. I think there was underrated positive. Boy, you got me on that one. I think they really showed a lot of what they wanted to do on defense. There were some breakdowns, but there were times when they really, Leonard Williams was disruptive, and they still have potential to kind of be even better. And I think they were very good on defense in this game, especially when you think of how many minutes they played. So I don't know if that's underrated, but that impressed me.
Okay. Last question. After watching the game, what is your updated win-loss total for the season, and has it changed?
Hasn't changed. No. 11 wins, 6 losses, or 12-5. That's where I've been all year.
All right. And that's the 2-minute drill. All right. So last question, Curtis, before we let you get out of here, is big picture for the Hawks. If you had to zoom out after this week 1 loss and you had to look at, you say, the next 5 weeks of this team, what's the one thing Seattle must prove in the next month to consider themselves a true contender for the division?
They have to have an offensive vision. They really do. And I don't feel like Mike McDonald is on the hot seat, because I think he's a very good coach. But I feel this feels to me after this one game where, like last year, where he sort of had, okay, I'm going to run the defense. I'm going to, coach the team, but Ryan Grubb over here is going to run the offense. And there's a give and take with that. It's like a marriage. There's just a give and take, and nobody's perfect and nobody's going to do it right. It felt like with week 1, it was very similar. Okay, Clint, come over, go plan the offense. we'll get everybody ready for week 1, and we'll go. And I think Mike Macdonald's next test is, can he grab his offensive coordinator and say, we've got to start running the ball. We've got to start running with authority. We've got to involve the tight ends in the game. There's just no other way about it. I had a callback. So 2021, I went to Pittsburgh for the Sunday night game. It was right after Russ had hurt his thumb, and it was Geno Smith's first game. And that game, they ran the ball 3 times in the first half. 3. And you have Geno Smith. I know Geno Smith is a veteran, but he's starting his first game on the road on Sunday Night Football against the Steelers. And they call 3 runs. And when they got Pete Carroll, before that he went to the locker room, he was not happy, Pete Carroll. He was, we got to run the ball more. We have to. And they came out and ran it right down the Steelers' throat. They had one pass on like an 8-play drive, ran it down their throat for a touchdown, and they were back in the game. I'm looking for Mike Macdonald to do that with Clint Kubiak on probably a lesser scale. It's just say, don't forget who you are, who we want to be. Let's do this, and then we can start getting creative with all of the fun little plays, the misdirection, and bring in Jalen Milroe and do all that kind of stuff. But let's beat everybody up. Let's get those edges contained on the offense, and give our guys gaps to run, and use Ken Walker as an outlet passer, and Zach Charbonnet in the gaps, breaking tackles, and Elijah Arroyo up the seam. I can't wait to see him run up the seam. And he's bigger than linebackers and safeties, and he's faster than most of them too. So, I think getting the offensive in gear will be the priority for the next few weeks. And if they can't do that, it's going to be very, very tough for them to be a real contender this year.
I totally agree with all of that, Curtis. And so, Curtis, before I, give the pleasantries at the end here, what is your prediction for this weekend? Do you predict a Seahawks victory, or is Seattle going to struggle and start 0-2?
I'm picking the Seahawks to win. I think something around the lines of 27-24, 27-21, with some wins, some turnovers on Pittsburgh. They put some pressure on Aaron Rodgers. He had a great first week, but when they start putting pressure on him, this offensive line is really, really untested and not very good in Pittsburgh. And I think that's where the Seahawks are going to eat and make a difference in this game. And I think there's going to be a lot of tight end action in this game. So Nick Vanette has had games back in the day against the Steelers. Well, Will Dissly had a great game that one year. I think it was 2019 or 2020. He had a great game. I think the tight ends will be heavily involved, and it'll be a really fun game. But Seahawks do come out with a win.
All right, and I won't give my prediction until I do my live preview show tomorrow night. So, Curtis, I totally appreciate you, man, coming on, giving me your time to come on and talk Hawks. It's great having you on the show. I'll definitely be having you back. But let my listeners and new subscribers know where they can find all of your stuff.
So on Twitter, Curtis93969 is my handle. And Seahawks Draft Blog, I post a watch points every week for the game, just some things that I like to look at. I kind of like to look at plays and statistical analysis to see where the Seahawks can find an edge or an advantage, where they can chase those edges and come out with a win. And maybe it's not necessarily finding those things, but it's identifying what they have to do, what they have to stop. So those are usually published over the weekend before the game. And then, randomly during the season, we'll talk about the cap. I'm sure we'll have some contract and cap analysis as some of these things come in, like Abraham Lucas deal and other moves that they make. So looking forward to it. So you'll find things from time to time. And then on game day, I probably tweet more than I'd like to care to admit. So if you want to follow me, what I'm thinking about during the game, you can do that on Twitter, Curtis93969.
All right. And all those links for Curtis's stuff will be posted in the description below. Curtis, again, thank you, man, for your time. And we'll definitely catch up in the near future.
All the best. Thanks, Bryce.
Thanks, Curtis. All right, guys, that was Curtis Allen joining me from the Seahawks Draft Blog. Always love having Curtis's insight, not just on the salary cap, but on the team as a whole. He's a very passionate fan, and I love having Curtis come on and give his perspective on the Seahawks. So make sure everyone go find Curtis's stuff over on the Seahawks Draft Blog, which is Rob Staten's blog post over there. Curtis does great write-ups there about cap, about things he's thinking about pregame before the game goes on. And usually Curtis is right most of the time where his thoughts are on this team and what direction they're going in. So make sure you guys check that out as well. And everyone, we've got a couple other shows coming out later today or tomorrow, I should say. We'll have the preview show coming out for the Seahawks Steelers game, which will be a live show. So make sure you guys have your notifications turned on for that. I will also have my Sunday night preview or post-game show after the Seahawks game, which usually air around 7:45 Pacific time. So make sure, again, you guys come join that conversation, be a part of this community we're building here with the Hawks Eye. Bring your passion, your emotions to a win or a loss. Either way, we'll discuss it. We'll break it all down. And then on Monday, as always, will be Seahawks Aftermath with Michael Thompson. And that's another live show that we'll be doing. So lots of cool stuff coming out over the next little bit. But as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, click that notification button. This is on Spotify, so there will be audio versions of it as well dropping. And as always, go Hawks.